I'm Tina. I'm 33, and I'm an interior designer. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, frozen, having just overheard my parents decide to leave everything to my brother, Jason. My father, Stephen, didn't hesitate. The 5 restaurants, the family home, the accounts, all of it. To Jason. Before I could even process that betrayal, my phone lit up. It was my mother. The same mother whose staggering medical bills I had paid without a second thought. Her text message was clinical, cold. Don't call or don't come. It's over between us. I stared at the screen. My hand was steady as I set my lukewarm tea down on the table. The house was completely silent, but my head was ringing like a fire alarm. A sudden, sharp pressure built behind my eyes. If you've ever been erased by your own family, you know that silence is the loudest sound in the room. My fingers moved. I typed 2 words. Got it. I knew by morning my phone would explode. The calls, the fake apologies, the demands. But that night, I chose peace over permission. I was done. If you know what that's like, to finally choose yourself, keep watching. When people asked what my family was like, I always smiled and said, normal. Because from the outside, we looked it, we perfected it. My father, Stephen, was a minor figure in Portland. He owned 5 restaurants, Hayes Family Dining. You've probably seen them. Big, gold letters on every sign, promising wholesome meals. It all sounded so perfect. Mom handled the books. She was the quiet shadow behind the accounts, making sure the numbers always added up. Jason, my brother, handled the charm. He was the face, the handshake, the heir apparent. He had a smile that could disarm anyone. And I handled being invisible. It was a full-time job, and I was very, very good at it. Our Christmas cards were the perfect proof. Every year, the same agonizing production. We'd stand in the living room, wearing matching sweaters, usually an awful shade of maroon or forest green. Dad's arm would be draped possessively around Jason's shoulders. Mom's pearls would be catching the light from the tree. Fake laughter, frozen just as the flash went off. What no one ever saw was what happened a second later. The camera clicks off, the smiles drop, the hierarchy slides back into place like a well-oiled lock. Dad would clap Jason on the back and immediately start talking business. Next year, son, will. Mom would go to the kitchen, her face tight, already thinking about the cleanup. And I would just disappear, go to my room, fade back into the wallpaper. My role was to be the placeholder, the extra body that made the photo look complete. The labels were set early, and they were permanent. Dad loved to hold court at the restaurants, and he had his favorite speech. Jason, he'd say, his voice booming across the vinyl booths, he's got business in his blood. He's a natural. Then he'd gesture to me, if he even remembered I was there. Tina, she's got art. He said art like it was a virus, a chronic, unfortunate condition. He didn't mean it as a compliment. He meant it as a disqualification. Art. It wasn't business. It wasn't family. It wasn't useful to his legacy. And in our house, if you weren't useful to my father's vision, you didn't really exist. The rules were different for me and Jason. Not just slightly different, they existed in completely separate universes. I remember when I was 14. That was the year Jason got a brand new mountain bike for his birthday. Top of the line, gleaming black and red, heavy-duty shocks, 21 speeds. The smell of new rubber filled the garage. I asked if I could get one too, Dad said. We'll see. A week later, he came home with a bike for me. He'd found it at a garage sale. It was heavy, the chain skipped, and you could see the rust under the chipped paint. He'd spray painted it blue, to match his, he said, like that made it a thoughtful gift. I wasn't just second best, I was a hand-me-down, an accessory spray painted to look like I belonged with the real thing. It only got worse as we got older. The stakes just got higher. When I was 17, I got my first parking ticket. I'd misread a sign downtown, left my car for 20 minutes too long. My father lectured me for an hour. His voice echoed in the kitchen. He talked about responsibility, about the value of money, about representing the family name. I lost my car privileges for a month. I had to beg rides to my part-time job. I felt about 2 inches tall. 3 months later, Jason, also 17, crashed his car. He'd been texting and driving. He didn't just dent it, he totaled it. Smashed it right into a telephone pole. My dad's reaction? A heavy sigh. A single sentence. "You've got to be more careful, son." Within a week, there was a new car in the driveway for him. Not a used one, a brand new one. I watched from my bedroom window as Dad tossed him the keys. No lecture, no consequences. Just a reward for being the chosen one. I learned my lesson that day. It just wasn't the one my father thought he was teaching. The lesson was, my mistakes were unforgivable. And Jason's were just invisible. You'd think after a childhood of being the hand-me-down, I would have just accepted my place. But I didn't. I kept trying. I thought if I just achieved something big enough, something undeniable, they wouldn't be able to ignore me. My senior year, I poured everything I had into my portfolio. I applied to one of the best design schools on the West Coast, in Seattle. When the acceptance letter came, it was thick, a scholarship. I remember my hands shaking. This was it. This was the thing they couldn't dismiss. I drove home from school and ran into the house, waving that thick envelope like it was oxygen. "Dad, Mom, I got in. I got into the Seattle program." My dad was at the kitchen table, going over invoices for one of the restaurants. He didn't look up, not for a full 30 seconds. He just kept clicking his pen. Finally, he set the invoice down, folded his hands, and looked at me. His eyes were cold. There was no pride. There was just annoyance. "Seattle," he said, like I'd just confessed to a crime. "Yeah, with a scholarship, Dad. It's—" He cut me off. His voice was low, and it didn't leave room for argument. "If you walk away from the restaurants," he said, "you walk away from this family. The business is here. Your life is here." I looked at my mom, who was standing by the sink, pretending to wash a dish that was already clean. I was begging her with my eyes, "Please, say something, be proud of me." She just stood there, her lips pressed into that tight, thin line. She wouldn't even look at me. She just nodded, a tiny, almost invisible gesture, in agreement with him. Behind my dad, Jason leaned against the doorframe, that familiar, easy smirk plastered on his face. He'd just won something, and we all knew it. He didn't even have to try. My father had drawn the line. I could have their version of family, which meant staying small and working in Jason's shadow. Or I could have my own life. So I left. I packed 2 suitcases, got on a bus to Seattle, and didn't look back. Those first few years were brutal. I wasn't just broke, I was alone. My scholarship covered tuition, but not much else. I waitressed at a diner until 2 a.m., the smell of stale coffee and grease clinging to my hair. I tutored design freshmen during the day, trying to teach them concepts I was barely grasping myself. I lived on instant noodles and gas station caffeine. I lived in a tiny, damp apartment where the heating barely worked. But I never called them. I never asked for $1. I did, however, send postcards home. Every semester. A picture of the Space Needle. A shot of the campus. I'd write a few lines on the back. Made the dean's list. My new project is, "Hope you're all well." No one ever wrote back. Not once. But I made it. I graduated with honors. I came back to Portland, not to their house, but to a tiny studio apartment downtown. I started small. I designed apartments, then small offices, then, funny enough, restaurants, Dad's kind of places, only I made them beautiful. I made them places people actually wanted to be. By the time I was 33, I had my own firm, Tina Hayes Design. I had a small team. I had clients who flew me to meetings, clients who trusted my taste, who valued my vision more than my own parents ever had. I had built a life from scratch. I was successful. I was independent. And I was free of them. So why, after all that, did I still pick up the phone every time they called? Why did I still feel that desperate, childish need to earn a place at a table I was never invited to? Why, when the crises started, did I become their first and only call? I had my own life. I had my own success. And then the phone rang. It was Dad. His voice wasn't cold this time. It was something worse. It was thin, and it was scared. My mother was sick. The diagnosis was bad, the kind that sucks all the air out of the room. The specialists they needed, the ones who offered a sliver of hope, were in San Francisco. Suddenly, the fact that I'd walked away didn't matter. The fact that I'd been disowned for choosing art was forgotten. Suddenly, I was family again. Or at least, my bank account was. Insurance barely touched it. The co-pays, the experimental treatments, the travel. It was astronomical. My father, the restaurant king, was leveraged to the hilt. Jason, the golden child, had nothing. So I stepped in. I didn't even think twice. It was my mother. I paid. I paid for the flights back and forth from Portland to San Francisco. I paid for the specialists. I paid for the hotel rooms near the hospital so Dad could stay with her. I covered the chemo, the radiation, the endless co-pays. My design firm was doing well, but this drained me. I took on extra projects. I worked weekends for 6 months straight, my eyes burning from staring at blueprints, just to keep the cash flowing. I showed up. I sat in those cold, beige waiting rooms, sipping bitter coffee, while she had her infusions. I held her hand when her hair started to fall out. And then, after a long, brutal fight, she went into remission. The news was a miracle. We'd done it. I was back in Portland, catching up on a missed deadline, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. My heart jumped. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment everything changed. I opened the message. It read, "Thank you for everything, sweetie." That was it. Sweetie. Not, "You saved my life." Not, "I'm so sorry." Not even a phone call. Just a text, the kind you send to someone who picked up your dry cleaning. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't even know what to feel, so I just went back to work. A few years passed. The calls quieted down, until the next crisis. This time, it was Jason. He called me, full of that manic, false charm he always had. He'd had a big idea, a gourmet food truck. He was going to revolutionize the scene. My father, of course, had co-signed the loans. 6 months in, it had crashed harder than his first car. He'd mismanaged everything. He was facing bankruptcy, and the creditors were threatening to go after my dad. I knew what the call was for. I sent him $25,000. A loan, he called it. We both knew I'd never see it again. It was the price to keep the family name from being dragged through the mud. The price to keep my father from panicking. Then, not even a year after that, another call. This time, from Dad. One of the restaurants, a main freezer and a commercial oven, had died in the same week. They didn't have the capital to replace them. "Just to get us through the month, Tina," he said. I sent another $15,000. A few weeks later, I saw an article in a local business journal. A small profile on Hayes family dining and its impressive resilience. There was a picture of Dad and Jason, arms slung around each other, grinning in front of the new oven. The article quoted Jason, talking about how he'd successfully restructured the business operations and secured new assets. My money, my work, my sacrifice. And he was taking credit for it. He didn't just not mention me. He actively erased me from the transaction and painted himself as the savior. I kept telling myself I was helping the family. I kept saying it over and over, like a mantra. I'm helping. This is what good daughters do. But as I looked at that picture, Jason's smug face, Dad's proud arm around him, I finally admitted the truth. Family isn't built on transactions. It's built on respect. And in our house, I was never part of the legacy. I was just the funding. I was already on edge. A week after I'd sent the money for the restaurant equipment, Dad called again. "Family dinner," he'd announced. "We need to discuss the future of the business." My stomach tightened. Just the week before, at another dinner, he had asked me for $50,000, casually, like he was ordering dessert. "We're thinking of expanding the flagship, Tina. It's a solid investment." I'd told him I'd have to look at my finances, a polite way of saying no without starting a fight. But this new dinner felt different. When he said, "Discuss business," a small, stupid part of me hoped. Maybe, after all this time, after all the checks I'd written, maybe they finally wanted my ideas, my design expertise. Maybe they were finally ready to ask for my brain instead of just my bank account. I wasn't even supposed to be at their house that night. I'd canceled on the family dinner, claiming a work emergency. The truth was, I just couldn't handle another meal of being ignored. But that afternoon, I realized I'd left my old design portfolio in their attic. Sketches from college, early concepts, things I needed for a big presentation I was giving to a new client. So I decided to just swing by, grab it, and be gone before they even sat down to eat. I pulled up to the house around 7 p.m. It was dark, a light mist hanging in the air. The house glowed, warm behind the curtains. That kind of light. It used to mean safety. It used to mean home. I let myself in with my old key, moving quietly. I didn't want the big hello. I just wanted to grab my portfolio and leave. The hallway was quiet. I set my keys down gently on the hall table, the wood cool beneath my fingers. The smell hit me first. Mom's pot roast, rich and savory, the same smell that defined every Sunday of my childhood. For just a second, it almost felt normal again. I could hear the low murmur of voices from the dining room. They were already eating. I was about to call out, "Hey, just me," grabbing something. But then I heard my name. My father's voice. Low, firm. The voice he used when he was closing a deal. "Jason's the only one who actually cares about this family," he said. The words sliced through the smell of the roast. "He's stayed. He's worked the business. He's the future." I froze. My hand was still on my keys. I heard Jason's laugh. Easy, smug. The laugh of someone who's never had to try. "So it's settled then?" he said. "Everything goes to me." My blood went cold. I wasn't just invisible anymore. I was being actively, legally, erased. "Everything," Dad confirmed. His voice was final. "The house, the restaurants, the accounts. We'll put it all in a trust for him." He paused, and I heard the clink of his fork against his plate. Tina's had enough from us already. She made her choice when she left. She's had enough? I'd just sent them $15,000. I'd paid for my mother's life. My mom, she spoke. Her voice was hesitant, small. "She did pay for my treatment, Stephen. All of it." I held my breath, waiting. "Defend me, please. Say something." My father's tone hardened. It turned to steel. "That was her choice," he snapped. "You don't reward someone for doing what they should have done out of love. That was her duty." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Jason chuckled again. A short, sharp sound. "Guess it's official," he said. "I'm the heir." I was still standing by the front door, at the bottom of the stairs. My heart wasn't racing. It was thudding, a slow, heavy beat that I felt in my throat. They were sitting not 30 feet away, carving up my life along with their dinner. They were rewriting history, turning my sacrifices into nothing more than duty. But the part that broke me, the part that shattered something deep and final, it wasn't Dad's cruelty. It wasn't Jason's greed. It was my mother's silence. She didn't defend me. She didn't protest. She didn't even whisper. I heard her fork clink against her plate again. She just kept eating. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stood there, my hand on the banister, the wood cold and smooth beneath my palm. It felt indifferent, like it had watched this all before. I backed away. One slow step, then another, terrified the old floorboards would creak and give me away. My fingers fumbled as I plucked my keys from the hall table. I slipped out the front door, pulling it shut so softly it didn't even click. The drive home was a blur of red lights and wet pavement. I don't remember a single turn. My mind was just a broken reel, playing back their voices on a loop. You don't reward someone for doing what they should have done out of love. And my mother's silence, that heavy, suffocating silence, that was the worst part. I got back to my apartment. It felt too big, too empty. I made tea, just for something to do, but my hands were shaking. I sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, and just stared at the dark wall. Then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up the room. It was Mom. For one stupid, hopeful second, my heart leaped. She feels guilty. She's going to apologize. She realized I wasn't there and she's worried. I picked it up. The message wasn't an apology. It was a final, cold-blooded command. "Don't call or don't come. It's over between us." No punctuation, just finality. I read it once, Then a second time. A full minute passed. I set my tea down on the table. The ceramic clicked against the wood. The clock on the wall ticked, the sound echoing in the quiet. The tea went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't text back, begging to understand. I just went still. The kind of stillness that happens right before a storm changes direction. I picked up the phone. My fingers were steady now. I typed 2 words. Got it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, and I opened my laptop. The blue light on my face was the only light in the room. I opened my bank account. I opened my credit card statements. And I started to scroll. Line after line. Auto payment after auto payment. My mother's prescriptions. Jason's credit card. 2 of the restaurant's main utility bills. The insurance premium for my father's car. All of it. All scheduled to renew at the first of the month. Just days away. Every single line was a chain, tying me to them. Every dollar was proof of how hard I'd tried to belong. And that text message was proof that belonging had never, ever been on offer. The first gray light of dawn started to spill across my kitchen table. I looked at the glowing list one last time. My cursor hovered over the first payment. Mom's prescription autofill. I clicked cancel. A little box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this payment? I clicked confirm. Then the next, Jason's credit card, cancel, confirm. The restaurant's utility bill, cancel, confirm. The insurance, the supply vendor, click after click. Each one sounded louder than the last in the quiet room, a quiet, digital severance. When the list was finally empty, I closed the laptop. I leaned my head back and whispered to the empty room, not anymore. I must have dozed off, because I woke to my phone vibrating so hard on the table it sounded like a jackhammer. It was 9:02 a.m. It wasn't just buzzing, it was exploding. I picked it up. 37 missed calls. Mom, Dad, Jason, unknown numbers, a stack of voicemails. I listened to the first one. Jason's voice, high-pitched, cracking with a panic I'd never heard before. Tina, what did you do? The cards are declined. You selfish brat. Fix this. Fix it now. I deleted it. The next was Mom. Her voice was suddenly soft, practiced. Sweetheart, please call us. This isn't like you. There must be a mistake. I deleted it. Then the texts. An email from Dad. Subject line in all caps. Urgent restore payments immediately. And another text from Jason. You owe us, Tina. I looked at that last message. You owe us. All the years of being second best, of paying for their mistakes, of begging for a scrap of approval. It all just evaporated. I put the phone face down on the table. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to make a fresh cup of coffee. I don't owe you anything, I whispered. I did more than just cut them off. I started to build. While my phone continued to explode with their panic, I ignored it. I opened that business proposal. The one they had dismissed, the one they'd laughed at, the one they called my art. I found the business card I'd saved from a hospitality conference months ago. A project manager at Pacific Restaurant Group. My voice was steady when I called. Hey, I said, keeping it light. It's Tina Hayes. Remember that eco-friendly sustainability concept I mentioned? I've got a full proposal ready. There was a pause. We loved that concept, he said. Can we see it tomorrow? That evening, I left the office later than usual. The garage was half lit, a low hum of fluorescent lights echoing off the cold concrete. As I reached my car, someone stepped out from the shadows between the pillars. My heart seized. It was Jason. Hey, he said. His voice was sharp, his eyes glassy. He looked frayed, desperate. You've been ignoring us. I've been busy, I replied, my keys tight in my hand. He stepped closer, blocking my way. Turn the payments back on, Tina. No. His face reddened. You think you can just walk away? After everything we did for you? You think you're better than us? I met his eyes. No, Jason. I just think I'm finally done pretending we're family. He clenched his jaw, his hand twitching like he wanted to grab me. Before he could, footsteps echoed. Everything okay, Tina? It was Tom, one of my co-workers, walking to his car. Jason flinched, glancing at him, then back at me. The bully in him deflated. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, I said quietly, opening my car door. It is. The next day, 3 days after I'd cut them off, she showed up at my office. Madison, Jason's fiancée. Her eyes were swollen, her makeup smudged, like she hadn't slept in days. He doesn't know I'm here, she whispered, clutching a manila folder to her chest. I gestured for her to sit. She slid the folder across my desk. You need to see this. I opened it. Receipts, bank statements, transaction summaries, restaurant funds tens of thousands of dollars wired to personal accounts over 3 years. A Rolex purchase, Vegas trips, first-class flights to Miami. You found this? She nodded, tears welling up. I've been helping with the bookkeeping. At first, I thought the missing amounts were mistakes. But it's him. He's been stealing from your parents for years. She broke down, a sob catching in her throat. I'm leaving him. I can't marry someone who steals from his own family. I leaned forward. Madison, you just gave me exactly what I needed. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Family meeting tomorrow, 2. Bridge Cafe downtown. No greeting, no question, just a demand. Perfect. The Bridge Cafe smelled like burnt espresso and rain-soaked coats. They were already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth. Mom stared out the window. Dad sat stiff as a board. Jason was scrolling on his phone, a familiar, arrogant smirk on his face. When I approached, all 3 looked up. Dad spoke first, his voice low and angry. Your childish tantrum is destroying the family business. Mom reached for my hand, her skin papery. Sweetheart, we can fix this. Just turn the payments back on, we can talk about it. I pulled my hand away. No. Jason leaned back, crossing his arms. She's just bitter, he sneered. Always has been. Funny, I said. I opened my bag and pulled out Madison's folder. You might want to read these before calling me bitter. I laid the folder on the table and slid it toward him. This, I said, is evidence of how you've been stealing from the restaurants for 3 years. Jason's smirk vanished. Dad snatched the papers, his face going pale, then a deep, blotchy red. Where did you get this? Mom covered her mouth, whispering his name. Jason? He shoved his chair back, the legs scraping the floor. These are fake. She made them up. She's lying. I didn't, I said, my voice calm. Your fiancé gave them to me. Madison. She left you, by the way. Smart woman. Dad looked lost, the papers shaking in his hand. Even if this is true, he stammered, it's still family business. Right, I said, and family helps family. I reached into my bag again. I placed a second folder on the table, my business proposal. I sold this to Pacific Restaurant Group yesterday, I said. The table went silent. The clinking of dishes from the counter was the only sound. $500,000. Mom's fork slipped from her fingers, clattering onto her plate. Jason stared at me, his mouth open, like he couldn't process the words. Dad's face drained completely of color. They loved it, I continued, the words coming easily now. Said it's exactly the eco-friendly design concept they've been looking for. They're rolling it out in all 40 of their restaurants. Looks like my useless art degree finally paid off. Jason slammed his hand on the table. You stole our idea. No, I said, standing up. I was perfectly calm. You rejected it. Big difference. I looked at my father, his face a mask of fury and shock. Let's see how your chosen son saves you now. Dad's voice was a low growl. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, gathering my things. But at least I'll regret it on my own terms. As I walked toward the door, Mom's voice followed, weak and trembling. Tina, please. I didn't even turn around. I just kept walking. Outside, the rain had started, but I didn't feel it. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't scared. I was free. That night, I came home to quiet. But it wasn't the cold, suffocating, silent treatment quiet I had grown up with. This was a real quiet, an earned quiet. The air in my apartment felt lighter. There were no more calls, no angry emails, no desperate, demanding texts. The storm had finally, truly, broken. I turned off the lights in my living room, letting the city skyline glitter outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. I poured a glass of Cabernet, the wine a deep, dark red in the glass. I opened my laptop. The deposit was already there. The transfer from Pacific Restaurant Group was complete. $500,000 sitting in my account. I stared at the number for a long time. It wasn't revenge money. It wasn't I told you so money. It was just proof. Proof that my art, my mind, the part of me they had dismissed my entire life, had value. It was proof that I didn't need their permission to matter. I closed the laptop. My hand didn't shake. I took a slow sip of wine and smiled, just to myself, in the dark. Peace, I realized, had a flavor. I'd never known that before. It tasted like freedom. And Cabernet. 6 months passed. 6 months of 18-hour days, of creative energy, of pouring everything I had into the Pacific Restaurant Group project. My design studio was thriving. We'd hired 3 new people. My phone still buzzed constantly, but now it was with clients, with contractors, with my team. It was the sound of building, not of burning. I'd almost forgotten what their panic sounded like. Until my Aunt Patricia called, my dad's sister. Her voice always had that specific, breathless mix of pity and gossip that only relatives can master. "Tina, honey, I thought you should know." I could hear the satisfaction she was trying so hard to hide. I leaned back in my office chair, looking out the window at the Portland skyline. "Know what, Aunt Patricia? They lost everything," she said, the words tumbling out. "All of it. All 5 restaurants. Gone." I didn't say anything. I just watched a bird fly past my window. "It's a total mess, honey. Bankruptcy filings, lawsuits from every supplier they ever used. The bank foreclosed on the house last week. They're just gone." I braced myself, knowing what was next. "And Jason," she whispered, like we were sharing a secret. "He's facing charges. Embezzlement. That fiancé of his, Madison. She gave the police everything." A small, involuntary smile touched my lips. "Good for you, Madison. And your father," she sighed, the drama cresting. "He's working at a hardware store, stocking shelves. Can you even imagine? Stephen Hayes, stocking shelves. And your mother. I heard she got a part-time job at Macy's, in the shoe department." I listened. I heard all the words, but they felt distant, like news from another country, about people I used to know. Aunt Patricia hesitated, fishing for a reaction. They asked about you, Tina. I think they finally understand. What they lost." I almost laughed. Understanding. It was a little late for that, wasn't it? "I have to go, Aunt Patricia," I said, my voice polite but firm. "I have a client meeting." I hung up the phone. I didn't feel a rush of anger. I didn't feel a spike of joy. I just felt nothing. The past, and all its power, had finally just evaporated. I looked around my new studio. The light poured in, clean and bright, gleaming off the polished concrete floors. My team, my real family, was laughing in the conference room, pinning swatches to a huge concept board. The past felt so small in that bright room, like something I'd already outgrown. That night, I scrolled through my old messages. I found it, my mother's text, still glowing on the screen after all this time. "Don't call or don't come. It's over between us." For the first time, reading it, I didn't feel a sting of pain. I didn't feel that old, familiar ache of rejection. I just felt distance. I thought about typing one last message, just to close the loop. But I didn't need to. I just whispered it into the quiet of my apartment. Got it. And then, I deleted the entire thread. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's not a confrontation in a cafe. It's not even a $500,000 contract. It's peace. It's the quiet, unshakable satisfaction of walking away from a table where respect was never being served. It's watching the truth do its own work without you having to lift another finger. No more yelling, no more begging, no more proving you deserve a seat. Just peace. If you've ever had to choose distance over damage, you know exactly what that feels like. Share your story in the comments below. And if you're new here, Don't forget to subscribe for the next one.